Number 17, Jacob Webb says, hello. Hope all is well. Just a quick question. How do you interpret the lying spirit in 1 Kings 22? Thanks. Hope you have a great day. I've gone back and forth on that one, and we will just read it together, and I'll offer a couple potentially unhelpful thoughts. Okay. I don't know how much of the chapter is relevant to this story. Man, it's a 53 verse chapter, and to keep things a little bit short, it helps me if you guys put the verses in there. I mean, just for my own sake of not always remembering those things, and I don't want to, like, I'm stalling the stream right now as I'm scanning a chapter while I talk and read at the same time. It's not the most useful thing in the world. I guess I can just look up lying spirit and consider where it is in the passage. Let's back up a little bit. Well, I'd like to give you guys more of the background, but I'll just read some of this passage here. The king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, did I not tell you he would not prophesy good concerning me, but evil? Then Micaiah said, therefore hear the word of the Lord. Okay, before we read this, Micaiah comes to the king of Israel and he's like, gives him bad news. Now the backstory is that he's like, hey, we should consult a prophet. The things that are going on in Israel right now, we should ask a prophet. And, the king's like, well, Micaiah's there, but he always gives me bad news. The king's not a good guy. And so Micaiah, being a genuine messenger of the Lord, continually gives him bad news. So the king kind of hates him. Micaiah gives him a story, and he's like, yeah, see, I knew it was going to be bad news. Verse 19, I'm trying to summarize here. Therefore, hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by on his right hand and on his left. The Lord said, who will persuade Ahab to go up, that he may fall at Ramoth Gilead? So one spoke in this manner, and another spoke in that manner. Then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. So one spirit comes up, and he's like, I'll persuade him. Then the Lord said to him, in what way? So he said, I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. Now, every king had prophets back then. Whether they were good, bad, honest, truthful, called by God, or just appointed by man, they all had prophets. It seems as though there was a minority of good prophets amongst the many that the kings often had. So I'm going to go and I'm going to be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And the Lord said, you shall persuade him and also prevail. Go out and do so. Therefore, look, the Lord has put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these prophets of yours, and the Lord has declared disaster against you. So then they argue, and one of them smacks Micaiah, and he's like, how? Which way did God's spirit go when he went from you to come to me? And they have like a little like cat fight about it all. And the question that I think stands out to us nowadays is often the question of, wait, is God endorsing lying in this passage and deception and that sort of thing? Let me offer a couple different possible interpretations. Like, one view would be, and I do this often when I don't know for sure the right view. It's not like I'm trying to waffle. I don't know everything. So the one view is that God is actually using like holy messengers, like an angelic good messenger here, a spirit, to go and deliver a message that is false, that he's going to deceive these prophets who are the king's prophets. Now, contextually, they're false prophets. They're bad prophets. They're prophets who already don't listen to God, and they make up whatever they want and tell it to the king, or they get it from somewhere else. So then the dilemma is, how would God tell like one of his angels effectively, or his spirits, to give a deceptive message? That seems wrong. Another a response to that could be that God deceiving his enemies as punishment for their sins is just punishment. It's just punishment. So I'm trying to think of an example of this. I mean, we do this in war, in war, like in D-Day. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, back in the day, World War II, D-Day, they took a bunch of parachutes and dropped them onto a beach they were not attacking. And the parachutes were dropped with like fake people, like dummies or something, on them. And they were dropped in order to get the Germans to go, oh, send everybody to that beach, send everybody over there to fight. Then they actually attacked a different beach. And so this is deliberately deceiving an enemy as part of a ploy. And then you have to wrestle with whether you think that's okay. Can God mislead the enemy? Well, he kind of misled Satan with the death of Jesus, because Satan thought this was a great victory, and it ended up being his greatest defeat. And so, to some extent, I'm comfortable with the misleading of God's enemies by God. I mean, I'm not going to go around and be like, "Oh, so Mike thinks it's okay to lie for Jeebus." Like, I'm quoting atheists here. They like saying Jeebus as a way of insulting, passive aggressively insulting Christians all the time. But no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But I think God has the ability to judgmentally declare deception over people as a punishment for their sins. And that's different than me just choosing to lie to you to control your life. It's God's judgment in the form of deception coming upon someone. Now, there's another response to this, another interpretation for 1 Kings 22, which is this idea. In Job, we have the gathering into God's presence of a being like Satan, who then has a conversation with God about Job. And so this implies that it may be that there are evil spirits that are also present in this courtroom that Micaiah talks about, in this gathering of God. So he gathers these spirits together, and he's like, who will go out and lie? And so perhaps the spirit that says, I'll go lie to these false prophets, is actually an evil spirit who thinks that the lying is something I want to do anyways. I'm looking to mess with Israel. I want to destroy Israel. And God looks at those prophets being false and says, you will have no protection from me against lying spirits. Go ahead and do it. Now, this, again, is a judgment thing that's happening here, but it creates a new context for the agent that's doing it. This is not a good spirit. It's rather just a spirit. And so here, the false prophets are getting false messages from false messengers. And the reason why they're allowed to do it is because God's, kind of like with Job, God's hedge of protection over Israel is lowered at the time because of the wickedness of the people. I hope that wasn't too complicated and confusing, but those are a couple different angles, and I'm not entirely sure which one I pick